So Carolyn's spending so much time in this camper here recently has given her some ideas that I'm struggling with. As you know, we bought this camper several months ago for Carolyn's son. Not for Carolyn's son. Actually, prior to that, we'd planned on getting a camper, but it was going to be much smaller and probably in better shape. We were looking for a camper that like a single axle that we could pull behind the camper in case we ever wanted to go camping. But with her son needing a place to live, it kind of accelerated our plans. Now, originally, when I thought about getting a camper, we were going to park it down the hill in front of the chicken coop underneath the trees to kind of keep some shade on it. Our plan had to be accelerated, so we bought this one. Paid a couple $100 more than what I wanted to pay for it. And it's not in very good shape. It's not roadworthy. Everybody keeps asking me if it leaks. Well, of course it leaks. It's a camper. They all leak. This one had some siding issues. So water was running down into the siding. I fixed that. So the floor has gotten wet. So I'm going to build a false floor on top of it. I don't even know if that's the right word, but I'm going to kind of like a subfloor underneath it. So, and then I'll tie that into the wall. It won't cost very much, a couple 2x2s, and a piece of plywood. It'll be a step up when you go into the bedroom. It'll be a 2-inch step up. So that'll take care of that problem. But there's a lot of problems in it. The plumbing doesn't work. The tanks have been taken out. The water pump works, but there's no tank. Like I said, tank's been taken out. So when I put water through here, apparently they didn't drain the pipes and one of them broke in the bathroom. We had a water heater. We got one in the house, but we also had one in here, but it didn't work after her son left, so I don't know what was wrong with it. But I just ran a hose in here straight off our IBC tank. So that hose just landed on the ground. I might bury it one of these days, but still the hose coming out of the ground and into the camper, it's going to freeze, so we won't have water in the winter. But that's okay. We can always bring water down here in a bucket, hot water. And we put an air conditioner in it. So there's the air conditioner behind the chair here. We improved the solar panel so we could run that. Now, as far as hot water, we'll never take a shower in here. We've been using this coffee pot to make hot water, so we can do dishes in here. So she's been spending quite a bit of time in here, getting it all cleaned up. I canned chicken in here the other day. It was so much more convenient. A lot of my subscribers have complained about the camper that we're not being purist to our idea that we live in a tiny house off-grid. Well, I don't know how purist that means. I mean, what does that mean? She was cooking on the back porch. I wouldn't consider a camper exactly luxury living, so couldn't we consider a camper a tiny house also? I mean, I don't know what we mean. We'll never move in this thing. There's too much that needs to be done to it. We'd have to winterize it. We'd have to put a wood stove in it. And Carolyn just doesn't seem to be a big fan of putting a wood stove in it. I mean, what I would probably do is take out like this corner here. You'd almost have to give up this entire room to put a wood stove in. So now you're relegated to the kitchen and a bedroom. So we could run propane, but man, like I said, look at this. The window has fallen down. I tried to tape it. I'm going to fix this better, but it has fallen down. So that's going to have to be sealed up. All the windows leak terribly bad. Air just pours in, so every winter you'd have to cover up the windows. And it's not insulated very well. And since we already have a place to live, I don't see it as a viable option to move in here. A lot of people want me to move in here, as well as a lot of people want us to get rid of this thing because we're not purist to our idea. So the comment section is kind of all over the place, and it's all complaints. At least I always feel like it's all complaints. But she has been cooking in here. Like I said, the canning. So she comes down here twice a day to come down here and cook. She's been moving a lot of her dishes down. She wants to clean this up better and put lay something down on the bottom of it. This is where the microwave was, but it stopped working also. I'm actually going to buy her new pots and pans. We're going to put them in here. The refrigerator works, but we don't need the refrigerator. We don't use the refrigerator. The only time we would use the refrigerator is possibly when we butcher chickens. You got to let them sit overnight, 24 hours. So the rigor mortis will break away from them. So you keep them cool for 24 hours. Now we usually just put them in a cooler with ice water. But wintertime will be really difficult in here. Now what we noticed is the stove itself heats this area not terribly bad. It does a pretty good job. She likes for us to come down here and eat. The entire time we've lived together, we've never sat down and had a meal together. We were always sitting on the couch or the chair, or when we were in a camper, we'd just kind of sprawl out where we could, or outside. But it's been kind of nice. She sits over here, I sit over here, and sit at this table here and have a meal. It's been pleasurable. She does dishes once a day. And like I said, we've been using the coffee pot to heat water. Couldn't do that yesterday. It was too cloudy to use. But she's used it every day other than yesterday. And yesterday, she just took this percolator. We've got this old percolator. And she just heated it on the stove. What I'm trying to say here is we're limiting the amount of cost that is involved. With the solar panels now more efficient, this is 900 watts. This actually uses more electric than our well pump. The solar panels can run that for 15 minutes. She's got hot water. It's so hot you can't touch it, so you end up using more cold water to fill your pan. She doesn't like the overhead too much, so she opens this window and runs a fan. I think tonight she's going to use a stove for the first time. She's got some chicken breast. We haven't used a stove in years. We were nomads, so we always used the Coleman camp stove, and then she's been cooking on the back of the porch, and same thing. I've been telling you the reasons we wouldn't live in this. And I actually think I've been wrong for a while. I've been telling everybody that if you want to live off grid, you want to reduce your expenses to become debt free. That's true. You want to become debt free, and you want to reduce your expenses. So you want to downsize your life and get yourself a tiny house. So you could build yourself a tiny house for $5,000 like we did. Or you can go to Home Depot and get a shed. They're about $5,000, but then you're also going to have to add in a lot of stuff. Plumbing, electric, walls, because it doesn't have interior walls, insulation, all that stuff. You'd have to do all that. So you'd be up to, I don't know, maybe $8,000 by the time all that was done. I've never considered a camper a viable option. That being said, around here there are a lot of people living in campers. I can think of two right off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure if I thought a little bit harder, I could think of more that live in a camper. Now I also know a lot of people around here live in Home Depot sheds. This could work for you. Carolyn says that you could find a nice camper for $2,000 or $3,000. And they claim everything works, roof doesn't leak, all that stuff. If you could find a camper for $3,000 or $4,000, that would be really a good option. Again, it would be difficult to heat, and it does get in hot down here. That's one of the reasons we didn't clean this camper up as soon as her son left. Was it was so hot in here we didn't want to run the air conditioner. So we just waited until it was cooled off before we started cleaning it. So if you can find a shaded area to put it in, the one I'm thinking of is in a shaded area. And if you're wanting to live off grid, to run this air conditioner, I think you have to have at least 2,500 watt generator. So our big generator or dual fuel could run this. I don't know that for sure. I've never tested it, but I did see somebody on the internet run my dual fuel generator, the air conditioner, off that. Now, if you wanted to go buy one, I would make sure you have your generator with you and test to make sure it works. Now, a big generator could run this, one of those industrial strength. My inverter can almost turn this on. It struggles and then shuts off. So I can turn the fan on. I think you can hear that. Let me put the mic up there. So I can run the fan off the inverter, but once I click it over to the air conditioner, it shuts off. So I just keep the breaker off so there's no accidents in turning that on. It doesn't appear the water heater works. There's a water heater, but it's very small. I don't think it works either. What happens is people will drain out these tanks. You got to be careful of that. So if you're going to buy one of these, you don't want that to happen. My dad told me this. I'm not an expert on RVs. He is. He's been dealing with them for, what, nearly 20 years now? He was a campsite host down in Florida. So you turn this on, it's supposed to heat up water, but it doesn't turn on. This runs off AC electric, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. You can find some that has propane attachment on it also. So just things you want to check to make sure they work if you're going to buy one. Bring a battery with you and see if you can run things off the battery. We don't have a battery on it, but when I turn on the converter, which turns as AC electric, there, you just heard, this is the hood, that runs off DC. what it takes is AC electric and converts it into DC electric. Well, that runs 40 watts for me. So we really isn't a good idea for us to run DC in here. Now, if we had a battery and solar panels hooked straight up to this, instead of the way I've got it set up, you wouldn't need that 40 extra watts. DC would already work. Of course, then you have to change your, like I have, your DC to AC to run your household appliances. But that's okay because it has an inverter in it too. I just don't exactly know where it's at. That converter also runs your lights. So it really depends on what you want to do with your camper. We have these extra lamps that run AC. Came with the camper. So that runs right off the inverter down in the shed. So, so it is a viable option. The concern to me is heat and trying to keep your pipes from freezing. Now we have the IBC tank, we have ventilation running from the house into the box where our IBC tank is, and that keeps our plumbing, our water, warm enough down to -4 before it freezes. You could do something like that with a camper. There's a water intake where you can plug your shore water up to your camper right here at the side of the camper. You could put an IBC tank right there, run ventilation from inside the camper into the tank box like I've got it set up, and you could pump water right into the camper all the way through the camper with an RV pump like I've set up. The tank in this one is very small. Wood heat gets hot. Now we did it in a tiny house. I suppose you could do it, but it just seems like everything is so flimsy that it would get hot quick. I'm sure you could engineer it correctly. I'm sure it could be done, but Carolyn just doesn't want to do it. You know, the couch is so close to the other wall, and you'd have to put your metal sheeting up and everything. But the ceiling isn't very tall. You're supposed to have 8 feet ceilings at least, and this might be 6.5 feet. If you had a propane tank or something that you wanted to run your heater off the propane, then you're in good shape. You could do that. Now, these propane heaters on these campers, I don't think they're that good. My opinion. I mean, I heard them run one time. We were at a paid campsite during Halloween, and they had this Halloween thing, and a bunch of campers showed up, and it was loud, very loud. I don't know if you'd want to live like that. So you could get things like a blue flame heater. Just type in Google blue flame heater. Get yourself a 10,000 BTU blue flame heater. I mean, there's a lot of heaters out there. I'm not trying to tell you which one to get. Her son, in late winter, early spring, used a Mr. Heater portable buddy right there. And he kept warm in the living room. Now, he slept in the living room. He didn't go into the bedroom. Heating this would be my biggest concern, but heat's always been my concern. What is interesting is now that Carolyn has kind of moved everything down here and it feels like she's left me, I've been getting complaints on both sides of the fence. Used to be having Carolyn cook on the back porch, or that's where she wanted it, was on the back porch, was abusive. But the reason she wanted it on the back porch was so the fumes and the stench and all that wasn't in her bed. When we were nomads, she cooked inside the camper, and it always stunk like our food in there. Burned popcorn or whatever it was. And she didn't want that. So she wanted it on the back porch. And that was supposed to be abusive. And I made tons of videos of people trying to report me and all kinds of things for abuse. Well, then we move in here, and then I'm getting 2 stories. One, we need to move in here. That tiny house is too small, you need to move in this bigger thing. Well, I'm not going to move into for all the reasons I just said. But the other one is now we got the purists who believe that we are cheating, that we shouldn't be using this camper. It's cheating. You had a tiny house. Well, I don't think I've ever said that the tiny house was a permanent thing. I mean, if we'd have just bought a camper just to go camping in, I'm sure Carolyn would have probably started cooking in. I don't understand this purist idea. I understand the purist idea of living off grid. Either you do or you don't. But as far as tiny house, we're still in that little tiny house that we built. And what is the definition of tiny house? I mean, I know a lot of people have these rules that you have to follow in order to be on YouTube, but there is no rule. That's the thing about my channel. There are no rules. It's about living your dream. And as we go along, things get easier for us. We learn more. We buy a camper for whatever reason, and we think, that would be good. We didn't go into debt to buy a big house and live like everybody else and struggling and mad at everybody because you can't afford anything. We started out with a small piece of property that was cheap, with a small house that was cheap, and now we have enough money we can buy a camper that's cheap. And we can expand our lives and grow and be happy. That's the dream, not to be stressed. So the older we get, she doesn't want to cook in the freezing, chilling temperatures outside. She wants to come in here. Well, that's perfect. So if you'll click this up next box, take you to a video where I was talking about the president just signed an executive order that you can't live off grid. So I hope I can inspire you to live your dreams. Thanks for watching.